Hello, everyone. We are going to wait just a few moments before we get started to make sure everyone has an opportunity to join. Alex, these numbers are climbing and I'm super excited.
Man, look at that. Me too. It's the pink shoes.
Always.
That's great. Can't wait to get to know you all as much as possible in this 1 hour. So thank you for joining.
All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Mastering Your Pink Shoes, Exploring the Power of Emotional Intelligence for Achieving Greater Success and Fulfillment. My name is Stephanie Anderson, and I am the Senior Director of Communications and Social Media right here at Grace Hill. I've been serving the apartment industry for the past 17 years. And I'm also a lover of pink shoes, but we'll talk about that just a little bit later. I want to personally thank you for joining us. I also want to extend a special welcome to all of our Grace Hill, Ellis, and Edge to Learn customers. Today's webinar will explore the critical role that emotional intelligence plays in our personal and professional lives. We will begin by unpacking the concept of pink shoes, which symbolizes those emotional triggers that have the potential to completely derail us if we let them. Now, before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded. Fantastic, because you don't want the pressure of having to take all the notes at once. So you will be able to watch that later and it will be shared with all registered attendees. Now you are as an attendee in listen only mode. This will help with any outside noise and disruption so that everyone can hear Alex's presentation. If you have any questions or you'd like to engage with our guest speaker, please use the Q&A box right on your screen. Okay, so now for the good stuff. I'm really excited to formally introduce today's speaker, Alex Howard. Alex is a vibrant, results-driven organizational effectiveness consultant with over 25 years of demonstrated management, leadership, and sales experience. Alex has a proven aptitude for helping clients establish a strategic vision that is executable. She combines strong business acumen with innate leadership abilities. Alex has designed and led a broad range of leadership development initiatives at all levels, including the C-suite. Client feedback shows that she demonstrates a high level of emotional intelligence and brings energy to any interaction, large or small. I do want to add that Alex and I have worked together. She has actually been a part of Grace Hill for our employees and really helping us develop our leadership and effectiveness as an organization. So I know her personally and have truly enjoyed learning from her for the past year now. So I'm super thrilled to turn over our virtual stage to Alex Howard.
Thank you, Stephanie. Such a nice introduction, and I'm really honored to be here to talk about a topic that is really a passion of mine. So I'm going to start with a scenario that we might all relate with. And let's say you are the manager or even director of project management in your organization, and you have it down. You've got the resources that you need. You know the processes. You've got the tools. You can run a meeting, a status update on a project like nobody's business. Here we are, week 3 of a really important project, and Jimmy at the status update meeting comes flying into the meeting, sits down, he's the first one up, and shocker, he is not prepared. 3rd time this has happened. You are so frustrated with this, you decide that this pattern of incompetence cannot go on, and you want to make it known that in fact that's the case. You cannot continue to deal with this incompetence. So with the 8 other stakeholders in the room, you let them have it. What happened there? When we look at IQ versus EQ, the IQ piece is really the technical skills and knowledge that you have regarding your job, your subject matter expertise. The EQ, or emotional quotient, or emotional intelligence, you've probably seen it several different ways, is really your ability to to react to situations in a way that is positive, productive, and moves the ball forward, taking into consideration the people part of doing business. So what happened there? The title of today's webinar is Mastering Your Pink Shoes. Pink shoes for me is the word that when I know there's a chance I might not control my emotions properly, and I could totally derail a meeting, I could demolish relationships and trust with people that I need to work with. I have a person in that room that will say to me quietly, but loud enough for me to hear, pink shoes. I hear pink shoes, it takes me to a happy place, and I calm down. And instead of letting Jimmy have it and really being condescending and calling him out in front of all of his peers and mine, I decide to do the right thing and have the discussion with Jimmy calmly, one-on-one after the meeting. So that's really what we're going to talk about today, is this idea that EQ is critical. In fact, it's 4 times more effective than IQ in determining who will be successful in their field. This comes from LinkedIn. I've got several stats throughout the presentation today to really give you, business reasons, real data that demonstrates, that shows that without EQ, there is a limit as to how far we can go. So what are we going to do today? We want to start with a definition of emotional intelligence, or EQ, or EI. Again, you can see that in a number of different ways. I'm going to use a model from a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and you'll see the front cover of that book. I highly recommend that book. It's a very easy read. There's a sort of the front part gives you some information about EQ in general. The back part, the back half of the book, is really a toolkit. It's fantastic for people to have resources, and when you identify where you're struggling, you can go to that piece. So it's a really great resource and very, I think, straightforward. I'm then going to really focus on self-awareness and self-management today. And there's lots of components to EQ. And in 1 hour, I really felt like if we could get an understanding and be aware of how we can come across sometimes, and then how to control our emotions, that will take you so far. So that's really going to be the heart of today's session. So let's ground ourselves in a definition that we can all get our arms around. So the piece here where it says it's a set of emotional and social skills. I think years ago when I would say EQ or EI or emotional intelligence, a lot of business leaders would look at me and roll their eyes and think that was soft and fluffy and come on, that's not really necessary to do business. Well, in today's work environment, this is definitely a critical success factor. So it's a set of these skills that establish how well we perceive and express ourselves. That's the key starting point. How well we develop and maintain social relationships. How well we cope. Goodness knows there are a lot of challenges with today's environment. And you could list as long. How do we cope when we are faced with a challenge where we know we're going to have one? And then how do we use emotional information in a meaningful way? Because in fact, not only can it enhance your relationships with others, which is a nice to have, but it can be a critical to have if you need them to help you do what you need to do at work and get the results you need. It is absolutely a predictor of success in life and work. And the great news is about EQ, it is totally learnable. It's a skill that can be developed. Now, as we talk about the top couple components of EQ, self-awareness and self-management, probably what's going to come to your mind are some people in your life that you can think of that do this extraordinarily well, that really know themselves, know how they come across, and really have a handle on that. And you're also probably going to think of people that this is what's getting in their way. And the higher you go in an organization, any organization, I've worked in a dozen different industries in my career, and I have noticed that this is really a career staller for people. They could be the smartest people in the room, but without this, they get stuck and don't go much further. So in fact, employees with a high EQ score, earn an additional $29,000 on average per year. Amazing. How could that be? And that's a workforce.com study. So, they're tracking this, and there's tons of assessments out there now to get feedback on how how your emotional intelligence is being perceived by others. That's amazing. So for those of you that where money speaks to you, or dollars and just straight numbers speak to you, I hope this is a captivating statistic. And if you're trying to get buy-in in your organization to do something like this in your team, in your company, this kind of data really helps a business leader sell the impact and the importance of this. So the book I mentioned, again, is called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's written by Travis Bradberry and Gene Graves. In this book, it's about $15 to $20 on Amazon. There is an assessment. Now, it is a self-assessment, but still a great place to start. And again, very easy to get. And the quote that comes from this book, we're going to pause for a moment and really reflect on this quote. It's pretty deep. People with the highest levels of IQ, so just intellect, smartness, technical abilities, technical skills, outperform those with average IQs just 20% of the time. So you could, again, be the smartest person, the best expert on project management, like my example in the opening, marketing, sales. You could know every piece of information you need to know about that technical skill. And yet the average guy who knows just a little bit, just enough to get by, there's only a 20% difference. So in other words, the more intellect you have does not necessarily mean you're going to do better. Then you look at EQ. While people with average IQs outperform those with high IQs 70% of the time. I'm sorry, I think I have a typo there. I just realized that. People with average IQs but high EQs, so I'm missing a piece there, outperform those with high IQ 70% of the time. That's a lot of Qs. So let me boil it down. You could be the best technician and the worst with people and really get stuck and not get results that you want. Versus you could be average technician, but extraordinary people focus, emotional intelligence focus, and go very far. When you think about CEOs and leaders of organizations, of really good organizations where there's a great culture and there's great retention and there's great performance, and you look at the leadership team at the top, and you usually will find people that have really learned how to get good at emotional intelligence. So again, it can be a learned skill. For some it's innate, but you can absolutely learn this. So as we move along our session here, and I've got my contact information at the end, I am certified in an assessment called the EQ 2.0 by MHS, which is actually a 360. I would love to partner with you and help you build this skill for you, your team, inside your organization. So let's look at what the model inside this book, which comes from actually a company called Talent Smart. Very straightforward. It talks about the self and social. We break it down into self and social, and on the self and social, you'll notice awareness is the first step, when management is the second. So we're going to start with the top left box today, because it starts with how am I? How do I know how I'm coming across to people? Going to share an interesting statistic in a minute that's, kind of depressing, but good to know, so that I'm going to give you a tool to take away from this session today that will help you build your self-awareness. Self-management then is, now that I know myself and I know what kind of emotions I have around certain people or situations, how do I manage myself? In that meeting, in that opening story, do I let it fly when Jimmy, for the third time, has let me down? Or do I know myself enough to know, pink shoes, calm down, take a deep breath, and stop? Take it up with Jimmy after the meeting. It'll go much better. That's management. That's managing myself. Then you layer on the social part. How aware, which on the social awareness part, really how aware are you of your surroundings and the dynamics, the politics inside your organization? How savvy are you with what it takes to do business inside your company and with your customers? That's being socially aware. When you look around the room and you think about where you are and what is appropriate in the moment, what is appropriate to do, to say, to act, that is being socially aware. So you're paying attention to your surroundings. Relationship management then has everything to do with social. It literally is, what are you doing to manage relationships that are important to you? And it takes some intentionality to target, making efforts around building those relationships long term. So we're not going to have time to get into the social part today, but again, I would love to engage with you one-on-one at any point after this call. If you'd like to know more, I'm happy to and would love to talk about it. But we're going to stay focused on the top 2 boxes today. All right, so the best image that I found on this is this picture. How awesome. Here's an old guy staring in the mirror, seeing himself as a young, handsome, 20-something. So if he is looking at that and thinking he's the young 20-something handsome guy that he's seeing in the mirror, there might be a gap there. There might be a blind spot. There may be things that, he's missing because he's not seeing himself like he should see himself, being self-aware. But I love this picture because it's so poignant. And, on one hand, how great that you want to stay young, in the context of this picture. On the other hand, the acknowledgement of, I'm not 20 anymore. What can I do well? What can't I do well? What might I need help with? What might I not need help with? How could I mentor others? What might I need more just, encouragement or education around because I am not 20 anymore? That's the value of really seeing yourself the way you are. So how do we do that? And in fact, before I get to that, this is the statistic I wanted to share with you. 95% of people think they're self-aware. If you were to say, even ask yourself, I think I know how I come across. Ironically, we're wrong most of the time. Only 10 to 15% actually are aware. And that comes from 360 data. 360 data is, surveying others that work with us, for us, around us, and asking them those questions, those hard questions that then we get the feedback back, which is a really key part of developing our self-awareness. So if this is you, and if you're wondering, I wonder how that went. When's the last time you walked out of a meeting, or you hung up the phone with somebody, or you had a text exchange with somebody, and you thought to yourself, I wonder if I was too direct. It's a question I ask myself a lot. I tend to be overly direct at times. So sometimes I have to really question, and I have learned to ask, did that come across too direct? I've learned to do that in my career because I recognized, while I think people appreciate that, some people don't appreciate that. So really, it is so important to just think about the stat and know that chances are pretty good you're doing things with people, and maybe the intent that you have going in is not the action that people are seeing. So the first thing I want you to think about as it relates to being aware of yourself is this idea around mindset. So you've probably heard the term growth mindset. I know that that's kind of a hot term right now. It's in a lot of articles, and it really refers to, are you a person that recognizes and understands that we are a product of continuous improvement? You never reach your full potential. You're always working towards that. There's always more or better that we could do. You persist through setbacks. You don't think you have to be perfect. You recognize you're not perfect. And there's always more to learn. That would be kind of the growth mindset. Whereas the fixed mindset, if you're fixed, you have this thought that you've arrived, that perfection is the goal. And that once you've perfected in your mind, whatever that means, you're there. Nothing more to learn. I'd like to just go along my merry way and execute. I don't want to be challenged. I don't want feedback because I have it figured out. So the first piece of self-awareness is to really get your mindset right. And if you're wherever you are in your career, if you're new in your career, starting off with this growth mindset will take you so far. You will be approachable. People will want to work with you. People will recognize you don't have all the answers. You can be challenged and you don't, panic, or you don't relent and you just give in and give up. Versus if you're 20 or 30 years into your career like I am, you could easily develop a fixed mindset. And it's the whole status quo is fine. What I've done in the past works. I'm going to keep doing it that way. What's the reason for change? What I'm doing works. I mean, really, the advent of technology is probably the best the best way to describe or even differentiate people between growth and fixed. You know, the people that are, I am not going to change how I do business. I don't think I need any social media. I don't think I need to really master learning how to be on a Zoom or a webinar or, you know, go-to meetings like we are today. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, and I'm going to think this will work for everybody. That's a fixed mindset. Growth is, you know what, I'm not super comfortable with that. I have had success doing things in person most of my career. So, but it's a new day, it's a new time. Certainly through the pandemic, we had to learn. I think if you weren't having a growth mindset during that period, your company probably did. You, if you own your own company or as part of a company, if your company didn't embrace this mindset, you probably got stuck. And in fact, I just saw some data this week that says those that had this growth mindset or this agility to pivot did fine in the pandemic. Those that were stuck thinking there's only one way to do things, were fixed, really didn't do well. In fact, closed. So mindset's the first key. The second key, and I think a really critical piece to self-awareness, is feedback. So I want to introduce to you a very easy model for giving and receiving feedback. It's called Start, Stop, Continue. And what I love about this model, there's a million models out there for feedback, but what I love about this is it's very non-defensive. So, you know, when you say to somebody, what do I need to start doing that I'm not? That's a pretty great question. Somebody then feels like they have the license to tell you, no, I really wish you would give me an agenda before our meeting because I don't really ever know what you want to talk about. So I'm not as prepared as I could be. That could be a great start. What do you want me to stop doing that's annoying or frustrating you or is leading to unproductive outcomes? Somebody might tell you, you know, you seem to dominate the meeting. You don't let other people get any airtime in. So I'd like you to stop, you know, talking so much. Let some other people have the floor. And then the continue is what's working. What would you like me to continue doing that you like, that is working for us in this relationship? So this is a fantastic model to use managing up. So with your leader, use managing down with your people to you. And what I found as a manager of people, so I've managed teams as small as 2 up to 100 in the last 25 years. So I feel like a great amount of experience. I haven't always been a consultant. I was inside a pharmaceutical company for 25 years. Didn't ever think I would leave. And so story for another day, but I got into consulting only 7 years ago. And so that's broadened my horizons on other industries. And so I've gotten lots of experience in other places now. But what I found universally true is feedback is a gift, but is not a gift that a lot of people like. So, you know, we sort of laugh about the feedback as a gift, but it really is a gift. Think about the last time you had food in your teeth, or a button was undone, or your fly was down. And how embarrassing. And you might have gone about your day for 2 or 3 hours with those issues, you know, talked to 3 or 4 people, and yet not one person said, hey, by the way, lipstick on your teeth, you got food in your teeth. Why don't people tell us things? Because it's a little intimidating. And people don't know how the other one's going to react. So instead of risking offending or upsetting someone, we just don't give feedback. So I've learned and I've witnessed and observed that the better we are at asking for it, the better we will be, the more self-aware we will be. If we ask for it, people usually are pretty open to doing it. Now, as a leader of people, I used this, and the first few rounds of this, I didn't get much on the stop. People were really, I think they were testing the waters. Is she really going to be, is there going to be a sort of retaliation if I really tell her what I think? I'm going to play it safe and just the start and the continue. Well, after they could see I was using the feedback to get better and be a better leader for them, the richness of the exchange was great. It was much better. So try this, and if you find that it's a little bit surface the first few times, don't be surprised if you're doing it with your people, for instance. Now, peer-to-peer, this is a fantastic model because, again, it's not hurtful, it's not a personal attack, and it's the questions are really well understood, I find. So a really, really good model for building self-awareness, for getting feedback, which ultimately builds your self-awareness. Another interesting stat here. 59% of employers refuse to hire a candidate with a high IQ but a low EQ. Why would that be? But they're so smart. Why wouldn't that count for everything? Because if you're smart, but you can't work with people well, and you can't influence, and you can't get buy-in or commitment, we won't get anywhere. You'll get instant results for a little while, short-term results because of your intellect and your knowledge, but over time, people start discounting you. And it's a shame because that IQ is important, but I find it's really the price of entry. Once you get in and you're an individual contributor and you're producing and you want to move up, if you don't have this ability to deal with and work with others and manage yourself, sort of the whole adage of a bull in a china shop, you know, where it's the Tasmanian devil, you come in and you leave and there's a trail of dust in your path and you never saw it, you know, because you just weren't aware. So this is such a critical skill. And again, feedback to me is the very best thing you can do to improve your self-awareness. So that's the first thing. So now that we've got, and by the way, if you haven't engaged in any 360s, there's lots of options out there for those. There is one centered around EQ, which also takes into consideration stress management and decision making. And there's also just regular 360s that just look at a core, 16 competencies that are really critical for any leader. I highly encourage you, I strongly encourage you, have a 360 about every 2 years because, things change, you change, your experiences change. So it's great to stay in touch with who you are in the eyes of other people because most of us do not work alone. We really need to be effective with others. By the way, I want to pause here for a minute. If anybody would like to ask a question, I meant to say this at the beginning, feel free to ask a question now about the self-awareness piece if you have one. We'll also have a little time at the end for questions, but I wanted to make sure you had some time now. If you got a burning question, I'd love to hear it.
Alex, I'm so glad you stopped to say that. Sandra, hi Sandra. She actually said yes earlier to what you were saying. Radical candor is what she wanted to point out. Yep.
Oh, great. Thank you, Sandra.
We did get a question. Megan has asked a question that I feel many others may feel the same and sometimes don't want to ask. So Megan, thank you for being so brave and asking this. What is a 360?
Great question. And I'm sorry that I should have explained that more. A 360 is really like a holistic picture of you. And the reason it's called a 360 is because you would answer a set of questions about yourself. If you have direct reports, your direct reports would answer those same questions about you. If you have a manager, your manager would answer those questions about you. And then a group of peers would answer questions about you. Same questions. And on the EQ 360, it's centered around 5 parts of EQ, which I did not show that model here because it's a little more complex. But if we had more time, I'd be happy to share it with you so we could do something after. But in the EQ 360, it's centered around that. And it's a 360 because it's a whole view of yourself, where there are assessments out there that are only self. Well, the problem is if 95% of us feel like we're self-aware, yet only 10 to 15% of us are, we're not going to catch that. We're going to see what we want to see. And that's just human nature. So when you have a 360, you see how your peers feel about you, how your direct reports feel about you, how your boss feels about you, and how you feel about you. And then the beauty of the two that I work in a lot is you can line it up and see, okay, where are the gaps? I think I'm really good at, being influential in the business. Yet I look and see what my peers think, and they don't think I'm as good as I think I am at that. And then my boss tends to agree with the peers. So you could have what we would call a blind spot. You didn't know. You didn't know what you didn't know. And when you don't know, you can't do anything about it. So by getting this data, it is life-changing in terms of your professional development. And in every company, should be every company, everyone I've ever worked with, this is never used as a weapon against you in a performance evaluation. This is really for development only. And the companies I work with around these 360s are very specific to say, we never send that 360 to anybody's boss, anybody's peer, anybody's direct reports. We send it to you, we do a debrief, and then you get to decide where that goes. So it's not like it's used as a weapon. It is a fantastic gauge of how, just building your self-awareness. Are you coming across the way others see you? So thanks for that great question. Okay, anything
Let's
else?
take one more, Alex, before you move on to the next.
Okay.
And this is another really great question. They are really coming through for us here. How would you tailor your approach when providing feedback to a peer who doesn't handle feedback well? We may know a few of those. How about that?
I have in fact, I'm coaching somebody right now, and it's taken, this guy is a managing director of $1 billion business, and he refused to hear the truth. So it's a great question. And what I've had, so in fact, what we did, because what I would try to do is be the mirror for him when I saw him engage virtually in meetings with his people and in person, and he was so defensive. And so what I did is I started off with, when I saw the defensiveness, I feel the defensiveness, and let's just say the guy's name's John. I feel the defensiveness, John. Can you help me understand your experience with feedback in the past? And you know what John said? He said, you know what my experience has been? Terrible. I've gotten fired. I have had bosses that have only given me, you know, what I'm bad at. I feel like it's demotivating. I don't even want to know. It has been such a I've had such bad experiences in my career. Now, this guy's been working for 30 years. So what a shame. He's never had, in his mind, a good experience with it. In fact, he feels like it's so punitive, he doesn't want it. So what I then said was, thank you for sharing that experience with me, because that's driven a belief that you have that feedback is invaluable. Well, instead, I'm trying to flip the script with him and say, if this could help you be a little more effective, because we both agree you're not getting the results you want, right? And he said, right. So if we could hear how maybe you're coming across to others, so that it could help you identify what's wrong and fix it, and you get better results, what would you think about that? And he said, well, when you phrase it like that, you know, okay, I'm maybe a little more open. And then I said to him, how open would you be if I asked you pick 5 people that work with you, 5 out of the 10 in your team, that I could give a call to? He did not want to do a 360 on paper, but I said I could call and interview each of those people for 30 minutes, ask them the same questions, and come back to you with themes. What do you think about that? And he goes, that probably would help. So I really feel like if you find that someone is really not open or they're very defensive, you know, I used to think, what's wrong with you? Because I was lucky in my the company I was at for so long. We were really feedback rich, and it was perceived really positively. So I learned that way, and that's why I'm so open to it, I think, today. But if you find the defensiveness, ask another question about what has their experience been, because oftentimes it's been poor, and that's why. And so, you know, if you come at it from, listen, my intent is to help you. If you don't want the feedback, no problem. I wanted to help you, but I understand if you don't want the feedback. And usually if you position it that way, well, no, I do want, what do you mean? What do you think? Usually you get people's buy-in, but it's a great question. Thank you for that. All right, Stephanie, should I keep going, or should we take one more?
We do have one more. I hate to interrupt your flow and what's going on, but we did just get a great question from Katrina.
Okay.
Katrina would like to know, how do you provide feedback to your supervisor?
Oh, great. I'm telling you, the start, stop, continue works. It is amazing. And I've been inside a company, as I mentioned. I have tried that. Now, I'll give you 2 stories. One is the start, stop, continue. I have had overwhelming success with that. And what I did with my manager was I said, and this was a manager that wasn't great at giving me feedback. And I wanted more feedback. And I would ask him, and every time I would ask him, here's what he'd say: you're great, Alex, you're great, you're amazing, you're great. 9 months of I'm great, and the job that I wanted came open, which was a promotional opportunity. I go to put in for that position, and I need his endorsement. So I go to his office, Chuck, okay, I'm great. You've said I'm great all year. This is the job for me. I'm dying to apply. And he says, well, about that, can't endorse you. What? What do you mean? I thought I was great. So really, really set me back 2 years of my career. I will never forget it. We mended fences, but the trust I had for him after really declined. So I suggested to him, I first said to him, why didn't you tell me? the two things I needed to do, one was take a different job in marketing to get some additional experience because I was in sales. I could have done that. There were 3 opportunities along those 9 months I could have put in for one of those. I didn't know that was needed. So what I suggested was why, and so I said, why didn't you level with me? He said, I didn't want to hurt your feelings, which is common. A lot of people worry about that. So what we agreed to do is a start, stop, continue. And he said, I want you to do it with me and give me that same level of feedback. So I think it's a great model. That's a really non-defensive, non-threatening way to do that. I would strongly encourage you try that. I'll give you another example, and this has been only one time in my career, but I will never forget it, and it's really what bad looks like. And it was a boss I had not too long ago, actually, in a company when I started consulting for a firm after my corporate experience for a couple of years, then went into a company, got out of consulting for a couple of years, and so this is only about 4 years ago, and he was a guy that was not at all self-aware, and probably 45 or 50, gone through his whole career with nobody being honest with him. So he had a pretty inflated self-image of himself. Well, me and 2 other people that reported into him were experiencing really bad behavior with him. And so the 2 guys said, well, you're really good at this. Why don't you give him feedback for all of us? I said, not doing that. Well, let's all 3 go, because why am I mean, I appreciate the compliment, but you guys need to, step up too. So the 3 of us went in to see him. And we said, Joe, we'd like to give you some feedback. And he said, you can stop right there. I am not interested. I don't care. This company is private equity held. We're going to flip in 2 years. I'm here to make the payout, and I'm going to leave after that. So I really don't care what you guys think. So don't bother. Now, that is the only time in 25 years I ever got a leader, a president of a company, say he didn't want to know. So I would say that's an extreme example, but I did experience it. So there is a chance with your boss that they say, I'm not interested. And if they do, they do. You can't control that. But I think at least you're making the effort to feed up, because I would say most leaders would want to know. And then of course your tone and how you do it, all of that makes a big difference too. But try to start, stop, continue. I think you'll find some success there. I certainly have. All right, let's move into self-management so we can make sure we give this piece some good time. And then I love your questions. So please, I'll make sure that I stop in enough time for us to leave time for questions. So you see this slide here. We've got some like lonely, angry, afraid, numb. You've got all kinds of names for emotions. This is, all of us have emotions to some degree. Now, some of us wear them on our sleeves, like me. Some of us, I'm married to somebody who has a great poker face. You don't really know. And it's funny because at times I'll say, what's wrong? And he'll go, nothing. Well, you look mad. It's just my face. I can't change my face. He's just a serious person. So, but putting that to the side, we all experience emotions in different ways. So the first thing that is critically important about managing your emotions is understanding them and understanding what happened, what triggered you. Now, I apologize if this word really triggers somebody in the audience, because I know it's a very strong word, but it really is visceral. You could even replace that word with response. When you get mad, sad, happy, frustrated, angry, any of these emotions, confused, something gets triggered in us, some kind of response happens. And by the way, guys, it's physiological. The blood rushes to your head, and what's going on in your brain. If you're not trained to learn how to control that, it's just going to come out. If you don't say it, you'll act it out. So identifying it and understanding it's so important. So when we think about what might trigger us, it usually comes down to one of these 5 needs. And I have the word unmet up there because if we're triggered emotionally by something or someone, it's typically because something here is not met. So let me just quickly go through the 5 core needs that we as human beings have. And then I really can't wait to hear I'm sure you'll have some questions about this, but I'd love for you to do some reflection for yourself. What is it for you? So power power is a strong word, and some people, don't want to acknowledge they want to have power, but really replace that with control. I want to have control of my own destiny here. I want to have a choice. I don't want to be told how I have to do something. And when I'm told how I have to do something, I get mad. So then power might be your trigger. Acceptance. You might be somebody that really likes to be liked and included. And so let's say there's 5 of you on your team and 4 of them go to lunch but don't ask you to go with them. You may get really sad about that. That's an emotional trigger for you because you're not feeling accepted or included. The third one is safety. And that is if you work in a manufacturing sort of environment, of course, physical safety is important. But I'm also talking about psychological safety. How safe is it in your environment to be able to say what you need to say? If you do that, do you lose your job? Do you lose your opportunity for promotion? Or is it rewarded? Is it encouraged? And I think more companies today are really looking to have a psychologically safe environment so that people feel like they can say what needs to be said. And again, there's ways to do it and ways not to do it. But assuming you're doing it the right way, safety might be for you. I don't feel like I can say what I need to say. I can't stay here. This company is not for me. That would be a trigger for you. It might make you frustrated that you can't say what you need to say. Value. So time. Let's say, you have a meeting, and I used to call on dermatologists for a living when I was on the sales side. And I'd walk in and I'd have this one, I'll never forget him, Dr. Cohen, and every time I walked in, he'd be opening his mail. Well, I would, in my early days before I was experienced, I would just keep talking, thinking this is the best it's gonna get. Well, over time, I would, get really I feel offended. And why was I offended? Because he didn't value my time. I wasn't gonna take an hour. I deserve at least 5 minutes of your time because I'm providing a service to you and a product to you. So for me, that was a trigger. And I would know before I went into that call, okay, how am I going to manage that? Because he's probably going to do it. Now, finally, what I started doing when I got smarter is I stopped talking. And that's a great strategy if you feel like people are not valuing your time. Stop talking. Nobody likes silence. So it's called the power of the pause. It's an amazing approach or tactic to getting something to change. And when nobody was talking, neither of us, he said, oh, what, sorry, what do you have? So he would put his mail down and listen. So value, that would be how to describe that. Then respect, am I heard? You might not, get your way on every decision that's being made on your team or in your company, but are people asking for your opinion? Do you feel like you're at least respected enough that they want to hear your perspective? So when you think about these 5 core needs that us as human beings have, really it could help you think about, maybe that's why when I get mad, I'm realizing my pattern is I tend to get mad when I feel like I'm not given a choice. So I'm going to give you another story, and and this is where pink shoes came from. So when I learned about emotional intelligence, which was about 20 years ago, so there's been a lot of developments and just, a lot more insights over the years. But I had a guy that I worked with, his name was Bill. He was a peer of mine and a friend. I'd gone on, he and his wife, and I wasn't married at the time, but we'd been on a couple trips together. We grew up in the company together. We grew up as sales reps. We both got promoted to being managers at the same time. So we were really close, I thought. And over time, he achieved greater positions with greater responsibility. And he became the guy that he was very passive aggressive when he got mad or frustrated with something or someone, and he would never confront the person. He'd go behind your back. And so Bill, one time, I put out, I was running sales training at the time, and I put out, a program that we were going to do and kind of what I needed from the leaders to help. And to my face, he said, great. Oh, this looks amazing. This is going to be awesome. Yet behind my back, what I found out is he was undermining it every chance he got. So I confronted him. And, for me, what was the need that was not met there was respect. I really felt like you've hired me to run sales training. You have in the past respected my decisions on what we're going to do. And now you're blatantly not in favor of what I'm proposing, which that's okay, but you don't respect me enough to come tell me. You're telling people behind my back. So Bill did this to me once. He did it, and I confronted him. Sorry, I'm sorry, you're right, I should have told you. Did it to me twice. Confronted him. Well, it's hard in my job, and on and on. He had excuse after excuse. So what Bill became for me is a person that was a trigger. Anytime I was in a meeting with this guy, anytime I had to work with him, he was heading up sales, I was heading up sales training. So we had to be together a lot, but I had to find a way to manage my emotions. And so I had a person usually there was the same crew of people in these meetings. So a trusted peer, I said to him, I need you to give me a sign when you start to see me, because I don't have a poker face, when you start to see me, showing my emotion, because it's not productive and it's not professional and it's not mature. And so I said, I'm going to think about what makes me happy, and pink shoes. How can you be unhappy? I'm dressed in pink today. Pink is a happy color. I said, pink shoes. Tell me pink shoes, mutter it under your breath. I'm going to sit by you so I can hear it. And it's amazing how if you can come up with a word, a phrase, something, picture your happy place, and somebody says that to you, it immediately calms you down. It's weird. It's weird how that is, but that is why the title of this is Mastering Pink Shoes. Because when he would say pink shoes, I learned how to navigate and work with this guy. Ironically, for a couple of years later, he ended up getting fired for the very thing he was doing to me, he was doing to everybody else, and he became sort of the office bully. But he would never tell people at his level or above. He would always do it with people below. So that ended up costing him his job. So just kind of an interesting end to that story. But come up with a word and get a trusted colleague beside you. Or if you can't be in the meeting with the person, write the word down on a Post-it note as you're going into a meeting or on a call. Put it on your monitor. We do a lot of things virtually today. So that you look at that and you take a breath and things are better. It's amazing how that works. The power of taking your mind to a happy place, because we know an explosion of emotion never ends well. It just doesn't. Yet you need to be able to get it out. So if you could control, yourself better, you'll do better. The other parts of self-management that I've learned is thinking about control what you can control. So why get all upset over and frustrated and mad and angry and, losing your mind over things that you have no control over? That's the circle of concern. I'm concerned. And so in that same company, we had an issue with goal setting, and our CEO would year over year set outrageous goals that we could never hit. And I was not in a role at that time to influence that. And so I thought, you know what, I got to let that go, because I felt like that was permeating my mood and my attitude at work. So that's why you see that circle of influence in the middle. Focus there. If you can focus on controlling what you can control, if you've got emotional responses about that, deal with those, because you can do something about that. And by the way, that's pretty empowering if you realize, you know what, why am I worried about things I cannot do anything about? Even the world today, if I've got my dad is retired, and to listen to him, it is like the world is coming to an end. And I'm raising two, middle school and high school age girls, me and my husband are. And if I listened to that all day, I would just walk through life really depressed. So I tell myself I can't impact that. I can't impact things maybe at a global level, but what can I impact for our kids, in the moment in our life right now? That's what I can influence. So that's the meaning behind that slide. So what do we do? How do we how do we manage ourselves better? First, know your trigger. So if it's power, if it's value, if it's respect, whatever that is, know it. And I really believe in the power of an accountability partner. Get somebody you trust alongside you and talk with them about it. And then especially if they're with you in meetings or around the same people, they can help you. So know the trigger. Then wait is saying to yourself, and it stands for why am I talking? Listen, be quiet, take a deep breath, let that physiological response happen and let it pass. Because again, nothing good comes from, lashing out. And then finally, bring yourself back to, is this something I can do something about? If it is, great, it's probably worth getting invested in. If it's not, let's let it go. So the two big ideas for today are really around self-awareness. Start, stop, continue. Get feedback. If you have never received feedback, start now. Ask your friend, ask your spouse, ask your kid, ask your colleague, anywhere you can ask. And you know, we have those feelings when we do something and it ends and you think, I don't feel like that went well. But you can't really put your finger on it. That's a great time to use start, stop, continue with whomever was with you in that scenario. How do we manage ourselves? Find your pink shoes. What is it for you? Is it beach? Is it skiing? Is it, you know, flying? Whatever it is for you that takes you to a happy place, identify it. Know when you're triggered, say that word to yourself, get somebody else to say it to you, recognize that and stop. And it really, really can save relationships and help you build better relationships and better trust with people. So I will pause here and ask, Stephanie, are there questions out there? We've got definitely some time.
There are so many questions. We have quite a bit going on, which is a great thing. But I want to just go over one thing first before we dive into Q&A, because I think it's going to tie us up for the rest of our time together.
Okay.
So before we dive into that, I just wanted to let our audience know that if your team is challenged, which it sounds like many of you are, by any of the topics that Alex has discussed today, our team here at Grace Hill is ready to help. We truly understand the trials and tribulations of compliance, along with excitement of diversity, career advancement, leadership, inclusion, and so much more. With our industry-leading policy, survey, training, and assessment solutions, you can proactively set the standard for your team while giving them the professional development they crave. So what does that mean, Alex? It means that our team is ready to help. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's just take today's fun theme and incorporate it into this. What we would like to do is help anyone who is not a current client or may want a demo if they are a current client and are looking for more information on our solutions. Then go ahead and type in the word pink in the chat box. That's P-I-N-K, pink, just like the earrings, shirts, and maybe even shoes that Alex is wearing today. And a member of our team will be happy to reach out to you and give you all the information you need to help your team be better. So now on to the next. One other announcement I wanted to make. If you're enjoying today's presentation, there is more on the way. Next month, we are hosting a virtual event, The Art of Onboarding, Building Strong Foundations for Employee Success, where we will explore ways to transform your new hires into rockstar employees. We hope to see everyone on October 23rd. All you need to do is scan that little QR code right there, and it will take you to our free registration page, and you will be all set for next month's content. So now back to the super important stuff right now, which is answering these great questions. So I have a question first from Lisa. Lisa wants to know, how do you deal with an employee that is stuck in a fixed mindset? So how do you change that employee to try new things?
Well, that's a great question. And I would say sometimes people don't even know there is another way to think. So that slide, and I think, Stephanie, will you make these slides available to people, or is there a way for them to get any of this content? I think so. I think if you even took that slide on fixed versus growth mindset, what I would encourage you to do is, first of all, shine the light on it. My guess is they haven't received feedback along the way. And so what's worked for them in the past, it probably maybe has worked. And so they don't know another way, and they don't even think they need to think about it another way. So if you know what motivates them, so let's say advancement motivates them, or better performance, which would lead to more money. Maybe money motivates them, or recognition amongst the team, whatever it is that motivates them. I would use that and help them see that if you want to, let's say it's recognition on the team, like that you're an expert. If they're motivated by that, I would use that slide, or even if you don't want to use the slide, but just have the conversation about what I think might be holding you back, Sally, is this idea that you've made it, and that there's an end, and that perfection is the only option. I'd like to offer up, there's a different way to think about it. How do you feel about learning something a little bit differently or adding on to what you know to make you even better? I know you value being the expert here. If you adopted sort of this continuous improvement mindset or growth mindset, imagine how much more impactful you could be. So we'll build on what's good. We're going to take you from good to great. That might be motivational enough for that person to embrace, okay, maybe there's a different way to think about it. The other thing I've done is help people with some examples. Like if you think about music today, you know, can you still play music on it? Well, before CDs came out, it was records. Can you play them on records? Yeah, but CDs sound better. Now you don't do CDs anymore, you stream music. And so, you know, not that CDs are bad. Again, not like that person, what they've done is bad. It's an and story, and we want to build on that. So how can we make you even better? And that's adopting that growth mindset. So I would start with feedback. I would understand what motivates them, tap into that to leverage what's in it for them by adopting a growth mindset. So great question.
So many great questions. We just got a comment and it said, I needed this. And I
Oh,
really think it's
yay.
great to share that because I, along with many others, feel the same way that we needed this. So thank you for that validation and sharing everything, Alex.
Oh my God.
Now for more questions.
Okay.
Okay. What is the best way to stop the emotion in the moment so that they don't react and you don't react?
Yes. I'm telling you, find your pink shoes. Find a word, an image, something that will take you to another place, even for 10 seconds. So, and I don't always do this well. I mean, I'm not perfect at this at all, but I definitely am aware. And for instance, I know what the potential for me getting triggered, if it's a person or a situation, I know that going in. So I will tell myself, okay, don't react. On pink shoes, I write it down somewhere, or like I said, I have a trusted peer that sits by me that could, you know, or text me, pink shoes. I can see it on your face, you're mad, pink shoes. You know, because I don't have a good poker face at all. So I would say the fact that you're aware you're having that emotional, you know, that emotion, that's 90% of it. Because if you're aware, you can stop it. Now, you can't stop the blood rushing to your head and the reaction, but you can take a deep breath. And again, that sounds silly, but you don't even have to be dramatic about it. You could just stop. Stop for a second, count to 10 in your head, say the word to yourself, and you will do better. You will do better. It's the stopping of that immediate reaction. And again, I mean, I think about how, you know, I do as a parent sometimes. I don't do that, you know, things that really bother me, I let it get to me sometimes. So please understand, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but when I'm really thinking about it and I know something's going to bother me, I do much better doing those things. So I hope that will help you.
I think so. You know, self-awareness is always at the forefront. So knowing and going into that situation and then using some of the great tools you've given us today, Alex, I think is going to be key.
Awesome.
So I wanted to announce another comment that was great. Laura says that she's hopeful we're going to have more seminars like this. She says
Awesome.
she believes it needs to be shared with so many more team members. So Laura, don't forget, we're going to share Alex's contact information at the end of the webinar in just a few minutes, and you will be able to follow up with her. And then of course, our team at Grace Hill is anxious to help you as well.
Absolutely. And I did this a longer session with Grace Hill. And so we've got some great talented people that can help you there for sure too. So yes, please, this does need to be, I agree with you. And there's, you know, it's more common today, and it's clear in recruiting, and I see it in people's development that this is now being discussed, where a few years ago, nobody really discussed it. They couldn't put their finger on what it was that made somebody better. What was the difference maker? This is it. If you can master this and you've got the intellect that got you where you are, man, the sky's the limit.
Well, I've got to be honest with you, Alex, we were right at the end of our time, and to say that we have like 10 plus questions pending. So I think the best is going to be to follow up, and that way we can get to them. I do want to ask you one last one that I think won't take too long.
Right?
Lisa is asking, is there an EQ printable test on Grace Hill we can print? To my knowledge, there is not one on Grace Hill. So Alex, do you have any sort of printable test for EQ that you could share with us, or maybe a resource you could share?
Great question. And no, I would buy that book, that Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I think it's between $15 and $20, and there is an assessment in there. So with every book, you get a code, and then you can take your self-assessment there. And what it'll reveal, there's then tools in the back of that book to give you ideas on how to handle the various, however you scored. And it isn't only a self, so keep that in mind. And if you want to do a 360 on EQ, just connect with me, and I've got one. It costs about $350, but it is well worth it if you're interested to learn more. It is called EQ 2.0, and it's the developer of that is called MHS, M as in Mary, HS. And I'm certified in that, so I could get it for you. You could take it, and then I could debrief it with you. But those would be the two best, I think, that I've seen out there.
What a great gift to give your employees or to give your coworkers, to really invest in them and help lead them. So I think that's a great, when you think about the holidays coming and you're wondering what to get someone, that could be definitely a good investment.
And it's really straightforward. Like, that's what I love about that model from Talent Smart that's in that book. It's pretty easy to follow. The EQ 2.0, 360, there's no book with that, unfortunately, but that model is a little more complex, really rich, because I love the 360 part of it, meaning you get other people's perspectives, but a little more complex. So I think if you buy that EQ 2.0 book, you're not going to be disappointed. It's really straightforward, and I think you'll find it to be really useful. And you could, like Stephanie's saying, you could do it as a team. That's even better. When everybody kind of goes through it together, you can have some fun with it. And it really is, it's bonding for groups, because we all have emotions. I mean, learn, if everybody's got the intent of trying to get better at that, everyone around you appreciates that, even if you don't do it well all the time. So I think it's a really fun and meaningful and powerful exercise to do as a team.
I couldn't agree more. So I think it's time for us to wrap up. But Alex, I hope you know just how valued you are from today's webinar. The comments that continue to come in, everything from the information that you've shared to loving the webinar, and even Michelle saying, looking forward to putting these steps to practice. That is what's key here, is those actionable takeaways that you've shared with us today, and allowing our attendees to take those back to their organizations and their teams and implement them. So a special thank you to Alex Howard for being our guest expert speaker today. Her email is right there on the screen for you if you want to take a screenshot of that. Of course, we're also going to share out today's recording for all registered attendees. And I just want to personally thank all of you for taking an hour out of your time to attend today's webinar. We appreciate you all and look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everybody.